Avi, what will enable the mutual fund industry in Vietnam to move to the next level?
I think for mutual funds to develop in Vietnam, it is in the early stages right now. And what is critical is you're going to have to see a lot more investor education. You're going to need investors to at least understand what product they're buying and the reason they need to buy these products. The second thing, in order to drive that also, in order to drive the demand, you're going to need to see better tax incentives. And I think the government is working towards that, to building a program where you do get some tax incentives if you do invest in a mutual fund. The third is you need to have an accelerated program towards pension reform. And the government is moving forward in that. You've got at least the final version of a decree that's out there already, but it is something that needs to get worked through. You need to have all the participants on board. So I think accelerating that process is going to be really important. So I think those would be the three main things that you need to see in order to drive the mutual fund industry in Vietnam.
And what are some of the main performance benchmarks that exist for investors?
So there's a couple of different benchmarks. I'll talk about the benchmarks we use. For our balanced product, we use a blended average benchmark of the VN Index, which is the Ho Chi Minh Stock Exchange Equity Index, and a 10-year government bond yield. And then for our equity product, because that's a little more focused on the large mid-cap companies, we use a benchmark called the VN 100, and that's the 100 largest companies in Vietnam. And I think there are, the Ho Chi Minh Stock Exchange is developing newer benchmarks or new indices which can be used as benchmarks. So I do think there are a couple of different ones. Obviously, if you're a foreign fund, you look at there's the MSCI Vietnam Index that you can use as a benchmark. And there's a couple of other different, there's the FTSE Vietnam Index that you could use as a benchmark.
Avi, how has VCBF performed generally against these benchmarks?
We've essentially focused a lot of our effort on research. So at the core of it, we believe investments is really what drives, obviously, and research is what really drives your returns. So if you look at a firm level, we've got two very strong parents in terms of Vietcombank as well as Franklin Templeton that lend us a lot of support. But we've also got a really strong investment team that we've built on the ground. It's nine people strong. I'm on the team as well as CIO and as portfolio manager on our two funds. And then we spend a lot of time on our investment process, which is we look for long-term investments. And what I mean by long-term is we look at 3 to 5 years. We're not looking at short-term trades, which is completely the opposite of what a lot of the market is geared towards, especially in emerging markets and a frontier market like Vietnam. So I do think spending a lot of time on research is important. So that's what we do. We are long-term. We do dig into each one of our companies because we are long-term, and we want to own these for a long while. And that gives us the flexibility of not necessarily having to step in to an investment or a company when we don't feel comfortable with where the valuation is. So we do take our time, and we essentially will step in only when we feel comfortable that we've got a sufficient cushion, or for lack of a better word, margin of safety that we can get a return on. And that's led to a really good track record. I think by the end of this year, our first fund will have a 3-year track record. We've outperformed the benchmark by about 700 basis points since inception on our balanced fund, and about 1,600 basis points on our equity product.